Welcome everyone to episode 10 of the Accessible Web Podcast. We're here today with a member of our team, Heather Berg. We're switching things up a little bit. Give people a little context. Give a little audio descriptions. I am Peter Jewett. I'm located here in my house in the country with some trees behind me in Huntington, Vermont. And I've got my a blue shirt on. I'm a mustache Caucasian male with a blue shirt and a accessible web hat. Heather's sitting in a modern kitchen, it looks like today. Virtual background she's got going on.
I wish that was my kitchen.
Very fancy. Sure. So Heather's a Caucasian blonde woman with a accessible web shirt, and then we've also got Paige on today. Paige is doing ASL translations for us, as she does every podcast, and she's a blonde Caucasian woman with a black shirt on. So we're all streaming today remotely via a Google Meet. So all checking in from our respective corners of the planet here. I guess the state, really, the country. But anyway, we can do a little, got a little intro for Heather, so I can jump right into this. Heather Berg is a third-generation Vermonter, born and raised in the Rutland region. She has a congenital condition resulting in significantly limited functional vision. Heather attended the University of Vermont, where she earned a degree in physical therapy and enjoyed a 21-year career working in that field. Several years ago, a further decline in her vision provided her an opportunity to reevaluate her career options and led her to accept a position with the Vermont Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired. She worked for 6 years as an employment consultant, supporting fellow blind and visually impaired Vermonters in their search for employment. It was in this job, while networking with local employers, that she met Peter Jewett and became familiar with Accessible Web. In 2019, she was asked to help AWeb develop accessibility usability testing practices for their WCAG 2.1 AA certification clients. Following a year of contract testing work, Heather was invited to join AWeb permanently as Accessibility UX Testing Coordinator in April of 2021. When Heather is not working, she's pursuing a graduate degree in Accessibility Studies from Central Washington University, taking long walks in nature, and spending time with her family. So, welcome, Heather. Glad we could finally coordinate and get you on the podcast here.
Ooh, that was a lot. It didn't sound that long when I wrote out the intro. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. It's great. I never realized that you were a physical therapist.
I know. I think we may have a connection there.
Yeah. My wife is a PT, and my mother, actually. So
oh, really? Wow.
I guess I just naturally gravitate to physical therapists.
Lucky you. There you go. Yeah, talk about being steeped in the medical model of disability for a good long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So today we're gonna talk UX testing. That's kind of what you're spearheading at Accessible Web. So I guess why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're up to in terms of building out accessibility team, UX testing team, and services.
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me to be on the podcast. I'm a big podcast fan. I certainly enjoy listening to them, so it's kind of fun to get to participate this time. Yeah. So I thought maybe it would make sense to talk a little bit about kind of why we're even doing UX testing with users of access technology. We talk a lot about compliance and conformance and principles and guidelines and success criteria and all that when we talk about web accessibility. And that's all super important technical components to help provide like structure and consistency and help developers and designers kind of get it right on their end as far as developing and building accessible content for the web and web applications. But then everybody works really hard on that, but if we don't test it with folks who actually rely on the access technology that leverages a lot of that sort of behind the scenes work, we could be missing some really important components of web accessibility. And the other piece is, and I probably should have led with this actually, is that the UX or usability, user experience testing when it comes to accessibility kind of really brings home the human component of this work, right? Like it's easy to get really bogged down in success criteria checkboxes and conformance and legal concerns and every other thing that we hear about on the regular now in this space. But I think what kind of sometimes doesn't make it to the forefront of the discussion is that this affects real people. These are people who have families and lives and aspirations and careers and want to seek education and employment and equal opportunity, basically, you know, an equitable life experience. And so I think sometimes that connects a little better with folks when you just really, that's the most basic element to UX testing, right? Is it affects people. These are human beings. You know, I don't know, I know certainly, you know, here you're more on the technical side. Would you say that that's true? Sometimes we overlook the sort of human component to things.
Absolutely. I mean, that's I think why we've seen in the broader industry of web design, UX and UI becoming such a field in and of itself, a profession. Whereas before, there was a lot of just, I'm a graphic designer. And, you know, now we're talking about, you know, with computers, with the internet, phones, kind of human. I've heard it put a couple ways, but a lot of it's like human computer interaction design. There's different courses, but certainly, yeah, it's a big thing that was overlooked for a long time. And it's something that it's easy to just say this website's good and put it online and it looks good for your one set of eyes and your one you know, you're launching a website and celebrate, but there's just always improvements you can make for pretty much every user if you just start watching multiple people use the website. And it's really beneficial. It's beneficial for the users, and it's beneficial for the business, from just a ROI perspective.
Well, I think it's important that you brought that up, you know, sort of the whole like maybe a practice or a discipline within itself. I mean, accessibility, usability testing is really, you know, just one component of that piece, but it can contribute, you know, greatly to the overall, you know, user experience with any particular product when it comes to like the efficiency and the you know, it's part of the big picture, and just for a long time it's sort of been overlooked, particularly as usability relates to individuals who use access technology. And I have to apologize, I don't know whether you've covered access technology on previous podcast episodes. Do we need to talk just a little bit about kind of what some of the primary areas of access technology are, just to give people
Yeah,
a little
let's.
bit of background?
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so in particular, you know, we think about a few different areas when it comes to, you know, usability testing, and that is individuals who, you know, typically it'll be individuals with disabilities who leverage this technology, but you know, we don't want to make any assumptions. So assistive technology can be things like a screen reader, for example, which, you know, gets a lot of airtime in the accessibility space because it can be one of the, you know, more challenging technologies to design, you know, to work with. And a screen reader is something that typically someone with a visual impairment or blindness, and or some individuals with certain types of cognitive and learning disabilities might leverage to help them access digital content. And so it basically reads content from a screen, whether that's on a laptop or a mobile phone, or whatever your device of choice is, it will read that content back to you, and it will try to make sense of it in a way that helps the user understand what's on the screen and sort of where it's located. And also, in addition to the sort of element where it's reading it to you, it provides an interaction interface, either with a keyboard or on a touch screen, again, depending on the device that you're using. So a screen reader is one. Screen magnification can be another one, and that one's kind of self-explanatory in that it enlarges text, images, graphics, whatever else you might be looking at. And typically someone with low vision might be using that type of application. There are other applications where you can adjust the size, alignment, color, contrast of the text on a screen, which someone with a learning disability and or cognitive impairment might also be using. There are other devices to give input to the computer. So we talk a lot about keyboard navigation, right? Because that usually pairs with a screen reader. But there are also switch devices, adaptive mice. There are systems that use voice input. Sometimes that's software, sometimes it's hardware. So it's a variety of tools that allow access for individuals with a variety of disabilities to basically access the internet. Any others, Peter, you want to add to that list? I mean, there are. That is not an exhaustive list. There's just kind of the ones that came to mind. I guess we could also mention multimedia, right? We're providing captioning and ASL here. Peter did a little audio described intro. So that's another type of, although, well, the captioning is a technology for sure in itself. What do you think? Did we miss any?
Yeah, and I mean, I would just point people to back a couple podcast episodes. I think 2 back now. We talked to the Vermont Assistive Technology Tryout Center or Tryout Program, they run tryout centers. So there's a variety, almost a countless amount of assistive technologies. There's a lot that are kind of homegrown DIY solutions based on what somebody, what helps somebody in just day-to-day life or to interact with technology. So, it's kind of an infinite list of assistive technology, but what we're trying to do is ideally by following the web content accessibility guidelines, that's the first layer, I would say, doing the coding right so that it meets WCAG, which should mean that the various assistive technologies are able to communicate. And then the whole thing today is verifying that is actually the case, because just because it does work or just because, it can get someone through, it's still UX testing. It's still all about the user, all about the person, and the same way you can make optimizations to improve the experience of somebody that might not use assistive technology. We're also trying to make improvements for people that do use various assistive technologies. So it's kind of an endless amount of testing, watching, talking to your customers, talking to your users, and making improvements to give them a better experience on your website or web application, or pretty much any aspect of your interaction with them.
Yeah. And to kind of veer away from getting too much into the weeds with the assistive technology, I think the take-home message is that these are real people leveraging this technology, right? Always remember that there's a human at the center of this process. And then the second piece is for many, probably pretty much all assistive technology users or access technology users, that technology is essential, right? So that's one of the reasons why, Peter started kind of having this conversation around Do we want to, think about using access technology versus assistive technology? So I'll just use myself for an example. I'm a screen reader user, and my screen reader doesn't assist me to use the internet.
Okay.
Like, it allows me to
Yep.
use the internet. No screen reader, no internet. So I think it's really important for people to understand that this is non-negotiable.
Yep.
This is necessary. This is essential. And we talk a lot about, and I think you kind of alluded to it, Peter, is how often making improvements in accessibility, usability for your products, often carries over to general usability.
Yep.
Improvements. And I think that that's really, that's an important point to make, but I try not to lead with that because I don't in any way want to invalidate the unique and specific needs of access technology users. So yeah, I mean, a simple analogy would be like, if I don't have a screen reader, my screen reader is not working, or the content can't be accessed by my screen reader, it'd be like going to your favorite restaurant and like the door is locked. They're letting everybody else in, but when you get there, no, you're not going in.
Right.
That's a really sort of simple analogy, but I mean that's the reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, right before we met, Heather, and probably part of the catalyst for reaching out, I saw accessible web accessibility as kind of an opportunity, and and it also was something that was a real kind of feel good opportunity, a place where we could really have a mission. So we spun accessible web out of our agency, and the agency does great work, and there's a lot of economic benefits that we have, and we help our clients sell more stuff. But when I first encountered web accessibility, it was this moment of like, oh God, how did I not know about this? How have I been building websites for 15 years at this point, and I never thought of this? And it was that was probably one of the first kind of embarrassing professional, like, oh man, this is an area that I genuinely want to get into and I want to learn, and there's an opportunity to kind of really change the web on a fundamental level, and train a lot of other people in this space on how to do this and how to be aware of this and how to test for it, to really raise the empathy. And so we kind of dove in head first, and we put up, bought the domain accessibleweb.com, and we put up our first website and started learning WCAG and having our developers take various courses and whatnot. And we got to the point where we were pretty confident in in our ability to make accessible websites. And we had this engagement with a company that was paying us to make their web application accessible so that they could sell it into a bigger organization that was requiring full accessibility. And we worked, did the best we could do, did in our mind a great job, and turned over our findings, and worked with a client to upgrade their web app. And then the client called us and they said, hey, can you hop on a phone call with our customer that's requiring accessibility? We want to work through a couple things. And so we hop on. Again, we're feeling really good about this project, and the company was like, well, did you test this at all? Because it's got a lot of accessibility features, but the screen reader breaks every time the screen reader cannot get past the navigation on this website. And so it was just this like, oh shit moment, that we realized we can't do this just as developers. We can't do this just as coders, dissecting a website, going through checklists. The most important piece of this is making sure people can use the final product. And from there we were immediately kind of started putting out feelers and saying, all right, how do we start to look into this and get together a group that is interested in helping us test, technically proficient enough to provide good feedback. And so even today, I would look at our company and we're doing great work, and I'm really proud of everything we're doing. But even today, it's one of the big holes that we're really eager to improve on is getting more users looking at websites and showing the value to our customers on why this is important, and really building out the biggest testing team we can, and providing also on the flip side of that, providing you know, good wages, basically, like a good job to people that want to test with us. Because if we can figure this out right, we can have a team of access technology users that are testing our clients' website, providing awesome feedback, doing it in a scientific UX testing manner, and really making meaningful improvements. So it was something that it was like the worst moment of probably my professional career, being on that call and realizing we neglected this piece, and something we're really trying to figure out how to put this side of the business together.
Yeah, well, I mean, the cool thing about that is that, you were willing to just step up and be like, yep, we didn't think about this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get it right. I mean, we mentioned my previous work with the Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired as an employment consultant. I met with a lot of employers, and, when I met with you, I think you told me that story, and I thought, geez, these people maybe actually really want to get it right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not only are they in the business because accessibility is starting to become the cool and trendy thing to do, they actually care about the end users, and that stayed with me, after just initially meeting you, and then also certainly with my employment background, the fact that AWeb wanted to generate some good, productive, sustainable employment opportunities for folks who use access technology as well. That really resonated with me, because we know, right, there are plenty of folks in the accessibility business right now who maybe got the technical end right, but are still pretty much overlooking the end user. So we talked a little bit about some access technology and the human component, and why UX testing is important, and certainly it also contributes to the overall business case, right, for accessibility. UX testing with users who use access technology can identify usability issues that don't get picked up on automated scans, don't get picked up on checklists for success criteria and all that. So, if you're a business and you're going to invest in getting accessibility right, it just makes sense to do the usability testing, just like you would with any other product. And, you get basically ROI, return on investment, is the business term, but you want to get as much as you can out of the time and resources and energy that you've put into building out accessibility for your product. So, for that reason, it makes sense as well. And we know that companies who invest in accessibility, and in particular, usability, they see improved, they generate more revenue, they are seen as socially responsible, there are just a variety of benefits, that they see as well. And so, when I'm doing testing work in particular, I'm thinking about not only my experience, but, I'm thinking about the client. I'm thinking about, how can I test this product and provide feedback that's not only going to make a better experience for me and maybe other screen reader users, but what's just going to overall make a better product,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, I don't know any business who doesn't want to either sell more product or have more, hits on their website, or, there's no business model that doesn't ultimately want a bigger market share. So when you take those things into consideration, that's a clear reason to do usability testing as well. So maybe we could talk a little bit about sort of what we do at Accessible Web,
Yeah.
testing wise. So the caveat I'll give before we start is that this is a work in progress, right? We're just starting to build out our testing team. We're super invested in it and in getting it right. And at this point, what we're doing is looking to build a core team of testers, maybe 5 or 6, maybe a couple more individuals who we know are proficient, expert users of their access technology of choice, whatever they use, whether that's screen magnification, screen reader, voice input, switch control, doesn't matter. We're really looking for folks who are skilled, highly skilled in that area. And as we put that team together, the other thing that we are looking to do is make sure that we have a diverse group of individuals so that we are using different types of access technology, as well as folks who use different operating systems and different browsers, user agents. So, because we know, right, in the more scenarios you test for, the more potential issues you're going to pick up on and can resolve before someone comes back to your site and says, hey, this doesn't work. So, we want a diverse group of testers. And then typically what we do is when a client is at, I think it's when they complete their 3rd round of audits, and they're at near the end of their certification process, the accessibility specialists will write up a testing plan with specific areas of a particular website or product that they want tested. It's always a little bit of a balancing act because they want to provide the tester with enough information to know what you need to do, but not really guide them, because theoretically we want this to be like a first encounter with a product. So once that testing plan is written up, it gets passed along to the testers. The testers then go ahead and execute each one of those steps in the testing task. And just as an example, a task might be, can you use the primary navigation? Can you make selections from the drop-down menus in the primary navigation? There might be interactive elements on the page, like, can you fill out the contact us form? Can you search or locate content within the site in more than one way? Those sorts of things. So the tester goes through and executes each one of those tests. While they're doing that, they are recording their screen as well as audio. So if there's a screen reader in play, or if someone's using voice control, you'll be able to hear exactly what keystrokes and commands they're using, and at the same time you'll be able to capture on the screen where their keyboard focus is, what's happening, and it'll become pretty clear pretty quickly if something's not working. And the feedback I have had from the folks who work directly with clients once we're able to provide those recordings has been pretty positive. I think there have been some folks that have had your same aha moment, Peter, when they got a chance to look at those videos. So we complete the test, we record everything, we provide brief written notes as well. And I mean, I particularly, when I'm testing, and I certainly always share this with my fellow testers, in addition, it's easy to come up with things that don't go right or things that don't work, right? We're always looking for those things, and those super important. But I also like to really amplify things that are going well. Like, wow, that worked really well. That navigation from page to page within the site was so consistent and predictable. I never got lost. I really understood exactly what was going on. I was getting consistent screen reader feedback. I really try to amplify those things because, we don't want to beat clients over the head with everything that's going wrong, right? We want to be like, man, when you get it right, this works so well. It just makes life a little bit better in that moment for people who are using the product. So I always try to, emphasize that piece as well. We return those video and written files back to the web accessibility specialists or the auditors. They review them and then, interact with clients with them as they see fit, where there are areas, to celebrate, or areas that need to, be tweaked a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, Peter, you and I have talked about down the road. We know that testing is most effective when it's implemented early and often. I
Mhm.
know our business model right now, or the workflow at least, is to, kind of bring it in more towards the end of the process. And that makes sense, sort of what we're doing right now. But do you want to talk a little bit about, sort of the big picture vision, the UX testing marketplace?
I don't know if we want to get into that. We don't want our competitors that are
Well, all right, we
listening
don't want
to.
to give too much away.
But I think broadly we're hoping to match people up with access technology users that fit. I mean, there's such a wide variety of skill levels. It's the same as computer users. You know, you've got your grandmother that doesn't know how to do anything, or maybe she's very technically savvy and she's the one all her friends turn to. And then you might have your buddy that, I've got a buddy that works in the trades and he doesn't use Facebook and he doesn't want to use it. He'll use a computer for email, but, have him try to write an Excel formula and is never going to do it. So, access technology users, anyone, it's just people, right? There's all sorts of different nuanced variations on how they interact with their computer or their phone, and what we're trying to do is get a big spectrum of people, and especially screen readers. Screen readers are kind of notoriously the hardest nut to crack in this situation. At least from what I've seen, and there's users, there's people that have been using screen readers since they started using computers, and if you've ever listened to them, it's borderline hard to keep up because they have the screen reader turned up to such a high speed and they are interacting with web pages almost faster, or at least as fast as someone that's just scanning visually through a page. And then you've got other people that are maybe learning and they're not aware of all the shortcuts, they're not aware of maybe all the features, and it's a little bit slower process, but they can get through the page as well. So how do we get a bunch of uh, access technology users in a place where we can match them up so that when customers want to have this testing available, we've got the pool of interested and trained. That's the other piece, is how do we create the process so it's not just an ad hoc, do this, do this, do this, but UX is a science. It's people are majoring in this in school, and getting college degrees, getting masters, PhDs around this. So how do we really make our offering as high level as possible and create the most value for our customers as possible? I mean, obviously, we want, if you're interested in UX testing for your app or your website, get in touch with us, and it's most likely something we should roll into a broader project. I guess I kind of skipped over part of what you just brought up, Heather, why we do it at the end. We just found that when customers are paying for it, there's a lot more, as part of a broader accessibility project, it's a lot more cost effective to do it at the end, to fix all the barriers that we know exist. If we're looking at a web page that has no alt tags on images, we know a screen reader user is not going to have any context there. If we see a website without a skip to content link, we know that that's an improvement that we can implement. So given the fact that people are paying us money to do this work, we found pretty early on, we used to do a before test and an after test to show improvement. But I think most people come to us with an understanding that if they haven't been thoughtful about making a proper accessible website, there's plenty of room for improvement. Accessibility doesn't happen accidentally. It's something you need to be thoughtful about implementing, and really be diligent and get it into place. So anyway, we tend to do UX testing as a final step to kind of prove our results and to add a layer of usability and on some level confirmation that we've done our job correctly. But that being said, we always uncover stuff. There's always more to be done, and that's probably the case for any round of UX testing. It's probably not ever going to happen that someone just says, "Yep, that was perfect." Uh, you know, let's move on and go to a different site.
Yeah, so actually to that point, Peter, I can say, as good as everybody is along throughout the audit and remediation process, I haven't done a test for a client or for accessible web internally that hasn't resulted in
Yep.
some, even minor usability issues.
Yep.
So, we basically just sold the whole concept of usability testing, because even though it's been, worked on and looked at and gone through and studied by folks who really know what they're doing, we typically still identify usability issues, even if they're not like straight up full on accessibility.
So let me ask you this, Heather. Do you not everyone has the budget to engage with accessible web and do a full comprehensive audit and certification and UX testing and everything. Do you have any thoughts or advice for small business owners, people that are trying to make some incremental improvements and know members of their community that are potentially willing to help? How would you suggest kind of a business owner reach out to the broader community and maybe get some people to provide feedback on how their website works?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a thoughtful way to do that is through perhaps like nonprofit agencies in your area or state agencies. So, we're in Vermont, I'll just use for example. I think at one point, actually, back in the day, you did this, Peter, was just to reach out to, here it's the Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired. It's part of our state Health and Human Services programming, and just sort of talk with someone there. I was in the employment role at that time, and so we connected. You let me know what you were looking for, and then we were in a position to help you disseminate information into the community. I think going with a trusted source like that can be really helpful. It gives you a little bit of credibility within the disability community. You could reach out to every state has a Center for Independent Living. Those can be good ways to get in touch with folks. And, likely there are individuals out there who might be interested in doing that type of work. And, I know you mentioned in your question, like a small business maybe doesn't have a big budget for a full project. Please pay anyone who does testing for you. Unfortunately, although I'm certain it's been unintentional, there's a history within this community, web accessibility in particular, of businesses, maybe when they first started out thinking like, oh yeah, we got to get a bunch of blind people to test this out. And, they would do a project and have folks do testing, and then they'd be like, oh, here's an Amazon gift card. What you're asking for from people is really a very highly specialized skill set. And people deserve to be compensated. So please, if you don't take anything else away from this, remember to value and respect those testers. But yeah, going with a local agency, I think, like I said, to a known source can be really helpful to get your foot in the door.
I think too, it just, yeah. And I guess I'd add on to it, if you have a website, make sure you put an accessibility policy on it. Give people a means to get in touch if they're having trouble using your website, to both report issues and to just have a number to call, an email address to get in touch with, to bring it to your attention, and to ideally, when you get those emails, when you get those phone calls, do your best to provide kind of that product or service, because no website. Go ahead.
I would say even on a more fundamental level, answer the email.
Yeah, right.
Answer the phone call.
Yep.
I just can't tell you how many times I just don't bother because I know now the burden is on me, the user.
Right.
And it's going to take my time away from work or school or whatever else I'm engaged in.
Yep.
And I just am not going to do it.
Yep.
Because I know. So,
yep.
Be the business that answers the phone or replies to the email. Not everybody's going to sue you. Not everybody's going to, be confrontational about it. They may just simply want to alert you to an issue.
Yep. And I mean, to your Waffle House example earlier, this is fundamentally what we're doing with our clients, is making it so that when someone walks up to your business virtually and they land on your website and they start navigating, it just works. And I guess the coolest thing for me was Heather kind of seeing one of the first times we were doing testing with you, and like it worked, and you were like, oh wow, this is awesome that this website's actually working properly. For the most part, there's obviously improvements and bugs, but that's fundamentally our goal, is that we're not just letting people into the Waffle House because the door's not locked. We want full access that anyone else has, and that's really the beauty of the web, is there's no physical limitations. We can build it however we want to build it, and it is possible to build websites, web applications that people can really be on an equal playing field and have access to all the features and information and interactivity that anyone can have access to.
Yeah, I mean, it's the very most basic principle of inclusive design, right? Equitable use.
Let's talk for a second too about we can close this out with kind of a you hit on overlay technologies, and I think it's fair to really kind of call them out on this call. But can you speak to like why overlay technologies? These companies that, won't call them out by name, but these companies that say you can install a piece of JavaScript on our website and our AI capabilities will make your website accessible, or we'll automatically provide these tools so that people can get the access technologies they need to use the site. Why doesn't that really work in practice?
Well, I mean, there's a few reasons. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I literally encountered this just the other day. I won't mention the brand by name, but I needed to buy a new pair of sneakers, and I went online. And on my mobile device, I landed on their website, and my keyboard focus got trapped in the notification. It was like, hey, download this special software. Here's our accessibility statement. It's gonna be great. I was stuck. I couldn't get out. So, I mean, there's just a straight up example of why it doesn't work. I don't want to know about your special software. I don't want to know what you've done to make my screen reader experience extraordinary. I want to go to your website and I want to buy my darn sneakers, and I don't want it to take all day. So there's that from the user side of things. But then, I know my specific technology and I'm very efficient with it. Why on earth would I want to download your special, I'm doing air quotes for anybody who can't see me, your special software just to get access to your website? Oh, don't get me going on this. This gets my blood pressure up every time. So, and I mean, the other thing, just, you'll get a screen reader notification that says, this site has been optimized for screen reader use. Click here for the screen reader accessible content or whatever. I'm automatically suspicious. Like, what part of the typical user experience am I missing out on by being redirected to this equal but separate door to your building or, access point to your website? It's just bad practice. People with disabilities don't like it. It doesn't work. Don't do it. Can I be any clearer?
No, I mean, it's the hardest part for me in my role doing sales and business development, is getting this across, that you can't that these companies out there, while they may be big players and you may see them everywhere, they're disingenuously advertising their software as a solution, and it's
Right. I mean, that just means they've got a good marketing team because you see them
yep,
everywhere. It
yep,
doesn't mean that their product is any good.
absolutely. It's just a veneer of accessibility for people that don't know any better, and it's not right. It's not fundamentally solving the problem. So I guess one of
Well,
the
and it frequently makes it worse.
right, yep,
I couldn't get out of their special statement
uh-huh,
pop-up portal, alerting me to all the grand things they had done to make their website accessible. I
yep,
went somewhere else. I mean, I still bought their stupid shoes because I needed that brand, but
yep,
I went somewhere else.
yep. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, thanks Heather for, joining today, and thanks for all the work we've done or you're doing, and we're continuing to do to kind of grow out the team and really focus on, we're committed to doing this the right way at Accessible Web, and it's going to be there's no shortcuts really, I guess, is what we're finding.
Yeah.
It's a matter of being diligent and doing it correctly, because the web should be equitable, and it's an achievable thing. It's just a matter of kind of putting in the work, I guess. So
Yeah, well, and I mean, the fact that you and I are still sitting here in nearly the end of 2021 talking about this tells us that we all have a lot of work left to do.
absolutely, absolutely. So, yep. Well, yeah. Thanks for joining today, Heather. It's
Thanks
it's
for
been
inviting me.
awesome. We'll have to get you on another episode. I'd love to talk. Have a conversation about your DBVI experience too, and kind of the challenges of placing people, employing people that may have disabilities, breaking down stereotypes with employers. So there's a whole nother podcast that we could do there that we should.
Oh, there's a whole employment podcast series. So,
Right,
yeah,
right.
stay tuned. George and I have got some good stuff coming up for you. I'm always happy to beat the employment drum. So,
Okay,
I'll
awesome,
take you up on that.
awesome. Well, thanks, Heather. Thank you, Paige, for providing the ASL today, and thanks everyone for watching. Tune in next week. Later, all.